Me, your girl Empress Goddess, the Georgia Peach. I started trying to stream this last night. This is my guy CG DAHLIN. Y'all know go over there and subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. Y'all know he's been a guest on my platform a couple of times. And he hadn't dropped anything in about 6 months, and he dropped this last night. I listened to some of it, but I would sleep on it. But I'll be wanting to listen with y'all. So let's get it.
Welcome to Spiritual Studies Session 66. This session is covering the broad range of numerology in different cultural, mythic, and spiritual traditions. When I say broad, that's exactly what I mean. There are certain topics, certain numbers where this session will go more heavily in, and then there are others that it glosses quite quickly. So by no means is this a thorough investigation, but for anybody who's ever entertained the wormhole of numerology in, say, Christianity or in, say, the ancient Babylon, so on and so forth, you'll realize that this is a horrible wormhole. And my job here is to, one, give an introduction, and two, show the human psychology of this whole operation, this projection of meaning into number as it translates and mistranslates across time. So when I say numerology, it's a bit of a ham-fisted term, because numerology would be defined as the use of numbers to interpret a person's character or divine the future. And that's not what I'm focusing on. We've spent more than enough time on divination in the course. However, there is this other aspect of numerology, which isn't the classic definition, but still yet, I guess you should say, number symbolism in religious tradition, which goes in many ways to Pythagoreanism. All things can be expressed through number, as is the kind of mantra. So everything, including personality, motion, metaphysics, I mean, you name it. Not just simply the scientific kind of mentality, phenomena where, every time my blood pumps, it's moving a certain mile per hour, right? Or every sort of iota of chemical orchestrating itself through my physiology, equating itself through number into emotion. Even greater than that, to say that everything is number, every influence from every direction, every dimension of your person, every metaphysical and philosophical sentiment, all are number. And so, with the Greeks and, of course, with Hebrew, both in which cases their alphabets represent a sort of numerology. Again, not the best term, but the letters are numbers. They are numerical as well and can be used for coding. And in which case, the most famous is the Hebrew gematria. There is also this other term, arithmomancy, which is obvious, somewhat arithmos being number, and mancy always denoting divination. So the Greeks, the Chaldeans, and Hebrew are usually the ones accredited with this sort of mancy, with this divination through number, which could be the progenitors of this modern numerology, where if you want, just do a quick search online, see what your name and your birthday, what numbers it gives, and be your own judge as to the matter. I guess it's just as good as taking on a strength finder personality test, or saying that I'm like an INFP or something. Anyway, And here's a reference that was made long ago in the course. It's just to say that 30,000 years ago, we can find excavation of carvings on bone that seem to be depicting moon phases. And so in which case already 13 would have a poignant, purposeful meaning within as a number to this ancient humankind. And then, of course, we move to the Babylonians, and then so that now the planets are numbered, right? And now the number of planets would hold a significance. Okay, so if they're counting them, then they're like, wow, there must be something about that number, and use.
Y'all know, this is my guy. You know, when I first really started my channel, I used to share a lot of his content, and he's actually, he's been a guest on my channel a couple of times. This is my brother from another mother, CG DAHLIN. When I dropped the link to his channel. If y'all not subscribed, go over there and show him some love. All right.
Using those numbers to predict eclipses, to predict flooding, to predict all manner of astronomical phenomena, and to later understand the precession of the equinoxes and so forth. Ancient Egypt would do much in the same, and then of course that moves to Pythagoras, and he runs with it. He runs all headfirst into it, to say that there are distinct frequencies emitted by the spherical celestial bodies in the heavens that are these kind of archetypal resonances that ought to be emulated in every way possible. And then, wham bam, you've got the Bible, and it's like, 666, this is a bad thing. And then, so on and so forth. Number. People nowadays, you get a receipt and it's $6.66. Oh no, I gotta buy something new. Or, if you get dealt a number on your plane ticket and it says 13, and it's like, oh no, I gotta pay to change that. This taboo, right, is innate to every culture in some form. And mathematically speaking, outside of taboo, right, then numbers do have signification. They do. There are perfect numbers and so on and so forth, semi-perfect numbers. There are sequences, like the Fibonacci, of course, the golden ratio. There is something to say about like when that number pops up, pi, so forth. And in which case the significance of the fact that these numbers have an effect in the innate nature of the architecture of the cosmos is the sort of reality that substantiates Freemasonry or substantiates the intrigue in Mozart's music, or endless examples. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this arithmomancy, and in which case then there are these very gaudy statements to come out with. Jesus's numerical value is 888, quite an auspicious number. Or in the Old Testament there are two words, Old Testament. The three letters come out. The three letters of the first word, 9 in the second. 3 and 9, Old Testament. 39. Number of books in the Old Testament. Wow, okay. Is that intentional? Again, three letters, Old, 9, Testament. 3 times 9, or 3 9 equals number of Old Testament books. Then you have the New Testament. 3 9. New Testament. 3 times 9, instead of putting them together. 27. Number of books in the New Testament. Is this something, right? This is that head scratcher territory. Why is Methuselah said to have lived 969 years? Why did John precisely number the fish that were caught in the unbroken net? The sum of the cubes of its digits. He says 153. 1 to the power of 3, 5 to the power of 3, and 3 to the power of 3 equals 153. So is this just simply a kind of showing of significance, that this is a a significant mathematical number, like literally in mathematics, not in some symbolism, and to use that number to represent a sort of perfection? So if you did your math correctly earlier, then you would know that there are 66 books in the Bible, which, that's a little interesting. So usually, though, that's not an okay number. And by Christian standards, that's 3, 7, 10, and 12 are the the good numbers, right? Of all the numbers that we can count, those ones are the good ones. And the bad ones, those are 6, 13, and 40, which are bad for different reasons, of which we'll touch on some throughout all this. I'm giving an introduction right now. But it's interesting to note that while this has such intrigue and such lip service given to it within the Bible, to say that you're studying numerology comes with, uh, you know, at least an eyebrow raise to the Christian community. They would not endorse the arithmomancy or the numerology. I mean, that would be leaning into the kind of Satan stuff, right? So it's strange, this contradiction of terms. But it is to say that the writers of this material were intrigued by this, or did feel the need to be exact. So in which case it means that the writers intended for something to be found there, or were giving some sort of historical token that we've lost the codex for. But we should pay attention to the grander scheme here. So this ancient Mesopotamian counting system, which gives us the trope of the 5-year increments, 5-year, 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 right? To count for them, it was to count in 60 months that would equal 5-year cycle. And so we have this trope, right, of everything's in fives. Meet me there at 5:45, right? We don't say 5:43, 5:49. That's not okay. It has to be in fives, which really it just comes down to the hand. I mean, look at your hand. That is why it's 5, unless you're missing a finger, in which case that's insensitive. But 5. Why? Why is that the innate, right? And that gives us the precondition for counting things off in 5s and 10s. Anyway, so this trope that I'm talking about, though, is ridiculously OP. And what I mean is humans use number for everything. What's the distance between me and you? Be it kilometers, be it miles. Number, right? How fast do I need to go? How fast am I going? How fast was I? Wait, I wasn't going that fast, officer. Number. What? How hot is it today? Number. How old are you? Give me the number. How rich, right? What is my financial statements? What does it look like? Give me the number. Your worth from a fiscal, standpoint, and from a reputational, oftentimes, depending on what circles you operate in, weighs on the number. How many people live in your city? What were the sports statistics like? What is the computation, right? What is the qualitative and quantitative metric of this scientific experiment? Music has numerical notation. And so, by virtue of this meat and potatoes to all things life that number is, obviously there's going to be a kind of meme that will blossom up out of a culture to say that this one is the one that we like, and this is the one that's like, nah. And so, this boils out, right? It could could be superstition. There could be metaphysical attributes ascribed to the number. There could be heavy religious associations with number, and we just take it for granted. I mean, we just assume everybody thinks about these numbers the way we do. You know, we were indoctrinated in this way, so when we see it contradicted, that seems strange to us. And it just shows the nebulous and arbitrary nature of this kind of enterprise. I mean, your misfortune could be dictated by a number that you're given, you know, or your fortune, right? Like, I like that number and I got that number on the lotto, right? So that means I'm going to get the lotto, or that means I'm going to win the bet, right? You measure things, the quantification, the historical record, to say that it happened on this date. That date has associations, thus the number has association. So, you know, it's just to say that we get a lot from numbers, whether we are following a tradition or not. We have so much meaning packed into each and every one of them in different kind of ways. So as I said before, you know, we have formed already in this talk a kind of historical basis, right? This kind of lineage into the ancient times of counting the moon cycles, into the approach of the counting the stars in the heaven and ascribing names, number to them, and using it for divination, moving on to simply just using it for quantification of next to everything in the modern existence. But I want to point out like a few interesting idiosyncrasies before we get to the real meat and potatoes of this whole talk, and this is just an instance where, say, for instance, the Yoruba people will not count, and you know this is very traditional. The traditional Yoruba numeracy would have it that they do not count their children, that it is viewed as a bad omen to name or to count your children, and there are different reasons for this taboo. And another example are the Zulu, and in which case there is a distinct order for how you count. You start on your left hand at the pinky, and then you move inward, and then you do the same but reverse on your other hand. There is an etiquette to how you count, and the name for the number is related or the same as the name of the finger that you're counting, that you would count on. So there already I point these two examples out to kind of show just examples of not necessarily the association with certain numbers, but how these odd little things can be changed culturally in our understanding of number and our approach to number. You know, so these influences are not ubiquitous. The only thing that is ubiquitous about it is that there is an influence around it. I mean, Western society, right? Typically, what people expect is that you're starting with your pointer finger when you start counting, and then you move outward, right? Something as simple as that. Anyway, let's I feel like I could go off the sides. Let's get distinct. We're gonna count. We're gonna count 0 to 12. We're gonna talk about each of them to varying degrees, and do some extra mentions after the fact. But 0 has an interesting history about it, of course, and usually is ascribed to Persian mathematicians. However, there has been recent evidence to show that it was in fact already discussed, if not put down completely, by India prior to the Persian integration. So this idea of 0 too comes with a host of meaning, and very, very notably to Hinduism, of which we are going to bring up throughout this quite a bit, honestly. 0. Because if the ultimate kind of eschatology, the ultimate seeking of the practitioner of Hinduism or Buddhism for that matter, would be to achieve moksha, or would be to become Atman, or to join Brahman, right? And so in which case you're not seeking to become one, right? Because one is not Atman. That one would be in this system, being self. Self is one. That's one. You want to be zero. You want to be everything and nothing. Zero, as it is a neutralizer of everything. Anything times zero equals zero, right? Describing the prime being is zero. Perfection and intelligibility. Absolute. Zero. Which is an interesting metric as we've come to use it. I mean, but in this way of symbolism, right out the gates, we're getting very haughty, I guess just symbolism is the best way of putting it. Meaning, purpose. But anyhow, let's move to one. One, as it is traditionally understood, is unity, which often symbolizes God, which again, already we're seeing the difference, right? Because Brahman is the all, right? That was zero in one system of thinking. And now we have God represented as one. One is the symbol of unity.
Welcome to the
Everything
chat,
is one. We are
Cars.
all
Thank you
one,
for dropping
right?
in.
Very, very psychedelic kind of statement there. However, to disagree with this again, the Pythagoreans didn't consider one to be a number, because number to them means many, plurality, whereas one is not many. One is individual. One is singular. The source of all
I hope
numbers
you're
is
well
one.
today.
So if it's not normal, right, it shows, because if you add 1 to an odd number, it becomes even. And if you add 1 to an even number, it becomes odd. 1 is this kind of mixer in that way,
If
not
you like, the
masculine and not
content that
feminine by this
present
conception.
over here,
So, if
consider,
anything, you might say, well,
sharing the
that is an
video
extension of God.
with your
You
friends,
could
leaving a comment
ascertain meaning
afterwards.
through how one functions in
You
these
know,
different ways
struggling to
as the
build up the
characteristics
platform,
of
to
God,
try to help me get
if
to
you
the
want to
algorithm.
ascribe that meaning to the number, of course.
We appreciate it a lot.
But in another way, we could look at different versions of Hinduism, which I should state, I'm bringing up Hinduism a lot, but in truth, Hinduism is so broad, and there's so many different ways of thinking. There's so many sects and denominations. Denominations isn't the best word, but just to say that in a different way, one has represented.
Yeah, this is CG DAHLIN. I dropped the link to his channel in the chat. Yeah, go over there and subscribe to him. Um, he's a really he fascinates me. He's very knowledgeable. He's actually been a guest over here on my channel a, a couple of times. I got to try to get him back over here again. It's been a while since he dropped anything. He dropped this here last night. I started listening to it, but I went to sleep. So I said I tried to stream it last night, but I had some technical difficulties. So I said, well, I'll go ahead and stream it today. I'm trying to get back with him so I can get him back over here. So we have another Q&A. If anybody want to ask any questions, he'll be over here to answer them as best he can.
This place, meaning the one earth, the one home. One is the earth itself, the place that springs spirituality, literature, and folklore. One is the earth, and this is where we are all one, because we
Right.
are of it.
Exactly.
And then, of course, if we look over at Islam, then we're going to see that it's not very different. Allah is one. And so when one is, coined, there it is, very plain and simple. The the emphasis on this is because of the polytheistic history of the region, right? So the polytheistic history of, say, the Levant, or say of the greater Middle East, to emphasize that God is one, right, is to show the simplification, the relief of distress, the simplification of this approach to the divine. And, to assert this belief has historical resonance. Okay, number 2, dualities. This is the splitting, the fracturing, which, by the way, I've been very intentful to not include any Kabbalism into all this. Anyway, the dualities are everywhere, right? Should I be here or should I go away? Is it left or is it right? Should I be living or should I be dead? Am I, is it me or is it you? Is it yes or is it no? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it yin? Is it yang? These dualities, two as it is dual. There was one and then there was two, right? And the kind of natural spectrum that forms from this progression to two. And already you can see, isn't that alone, even just thinking about mathematically and the possibilities, isn't it already kind of beautiful, this kind of symbolism of creation as we've moved from just simply 0 to 2. And you can see that purpose, the meaning that seems so naturally involved in it, has a lot of room to be projected into. Anyway, so we have these dualities, and then, here come the Pythagoreans again, and they ascribe the number 2 to female. Female is number 2. And then other numerological traditions think that number 2 is male. So, there's a kind of classic thing. I mean, in this language, the chair is female. And in this language, the chair is male. Number 2, in occult traditions, by like Agrippa, for example, is the symbol for man. And subsequently, and by extension, is the symbol for evil and sex. Which that does, at least the sex thing makes a bit more sense, It takes two to tango, as they say. Genesis does not like 2. And that's just to say that as Genesis is rattling off the days of which things were created, the second day, it doesn't specifically say, and it was good. Unlike it does with the other days. And so since it didn't specify that what was happening on that second day was good, that means it was bad, I guess. We could read a lot into that. In Sanskrit, talking of Hinduism again, 2 is associated with the word for eye. And when I say eye, I mean like those things that you see with. And in which case, 2 eyes, right? 2 as a word that is related to the word eye, or exactly as, I don't know, I don't speak it. My sources say so. And so in which case, yet again, we see the example like we did with the Zulu, where the number counted is associated with a physical body part that is associated with the counting of that number. Of course, next is 3. And 3, we've made a bit of a meme throughout the course before, because 3 would become ubiquitous with spiritual traditions. And by no means am I going to touch on all of them, but in Hinduism, you have 1, say eternal being, out of the Brahman, right? Creation is 2. Creation couldn't come to be unless duality came to be, right? And then comes 3, which is the rhythmic organization, the kind of completion of all the factors that would
You well,
span
let me
out
tell
the
you,
rest
I'm
of it, right?
sorry.
3 was
I was up there in
where
the kitchen.
it all opened up. And this is the
I wasn't ignoring anybody. What's up, Tay Weezy? That you're welcome, Tars. I appreciate you dropping in and commenting. You know, I know people be watching, but I be wanting at least read some comments or whatever. I'm sorry, I wasn't ignoring y'all. I was up in the kitchen trying to fix a little something to eat. You know, I'll be back and forth listening. So don't think I'm ignoring you all. Okay, try to moving around the house. A woman always have something to do.
tridevia, the
Hey,
trimirta.
Weezy, I hope you're all right today,
The
champ.
3 as it is the kind of archetypal framework for the universe, right? The 3 deities, the 3 that keep it together. Which this really has a number of implications. I mean, we have in
We have to keep it
Egypt,
together.
you
We
have
really keep it
Khepri
together. Y'all talk
rising,
all
you
that
have
noise,
Ra
but who
midday, and you
who
have
always got to come
Aton,
through?
which is the
Us
setting.
women.
The 3. You could say, in a certain way of thinking, that there are the 3 phases of the moon. You have,
You
then
must have been.
again,
What?
in
Hold on a minute.
Babylon, you have Baal, Ea.
What that was you say you was having last night? A sleepover? You must have been asleep when I came through the last night. I came through and dropped in and hollered at you. I said, damn, I ain't been able to holler at my boy in a minute. Let me go see what's going on. I seen I had a notification from you. Yeah, I got me some. I'm cooking me some string beans, some snaps, some string beans, with some ham hocks in it. I don't know. Might fry me a couple of pork chop. I don't know. Shoot, I'm kind of tired. Yeah, I be multitasking. Y'all know that. I be moving around like a chicken sometimes with my head cut off. But if I don't get out there and get it done, it won't get done. You know what they say? If you want something done, you got to do it yourself.
And Anu, heaven, earth, and the abyss. You have the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. You have the 3 Little Pigs. You have 3 guesses and only 3 guesses. You have the 3 bears with their cute porridge. In French, we have this expression, je m'en descends trio, or no, trois, which
I
is
just finished eating me some macaroni salad.
never 2 without 3, signifying how things happen in threes, right? So this case in the French expression is more to the bad things happen in threes, and in a more kind of English colloquialism idiom, good things happen in threes as a saying. And why? Right? Why threes? And in which case it seems that we as humans are reacting to this objective phenomena that things do happen in threes. Fool me once, when you fool me twice, blah blah blah. Right? It's 3. And then, obviously there is the Christian Trinity, for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But that trope of 3 goes way, way back and is way, way spread across the world, right? And so then here we can see why Pythagoras and by extension Plato have this obsessive quality with the triangle. It is 3. And by virtue of 3 having this kind of effect, objectively throughout, like, just the lived experience, the phenomenology of existence, the triangle, the pyramid, would be of great fascination to see what you could unveil about the nature of the world by its observation. And then,
Hey, baby. What's up, baby? Good, boy. When I see you drop in, you always make my day, love. How you doing? Moving around, multitasking as usual, trying to cook, fix a little something to eat and everything, and you know, listen to this. So I won't be ignoring y'all. I'll just be in the background doing what I gotta do. What I was gonna say. I was gonna say something to you. I had him on my This guy here, I had him on my platform a couple of times. I try to get him back over here. He been busy because he go around to different colleges and stuff and lecturing on these topics. I need to get with him soon and I get him back over here. See, I know y'all like this kind of content. He just dropped this last night. He hadn't dropped anything in about 6 months. Cause y'all know I used to present a lot of his content. Cause I like the way he break it down to where a child can understand it. See.
When it comes to religious traditions, again, in Islam, of course, three is a big deal. When it comes to these rituals, as salah or wudu, I don't know if I'm saying those correctly, prayer, ablution, to wash their faces, arms, and feet with water 3 times, each of those things 3 times, to recite verses 3 times while bowing. Um, this is also done in Christianity with the Holy Trinity. Uh, this because allegedly that Jesus took 3 days to come back, right? Of course, he would take 3 days to come back. In the prayer, it's in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. 3 motions with 3 fingers traditionally done. Not the beginning or end of how far that one goes. But we're moving on to 4. And the number 4 has this significance in greater margin to the native traditions. But not just there, because if we're simply talking about the elements, then it is traditionally 4. Earth, air, fire, water. Then there are the 4 points of the compass and the 4 phases. See, and this is the other understanding. There are 4 phases of the moon. See, again, it just depends on who we're asking about, what number is ascribed to what. But in this understanding, there's half moon waning, there's full, there's half moon waxing, and there's new. There's the 4 noble truths in Buddhism, just as an extension. We have the idea of the humors in the ancient kind of medicinal or anatomical understanding. That's black bile, blood, phlegm, and is that choler or choler? I haven't came across that one. Oh, choleric. Yeah, choleric, melancholic, sanguine, and phlegmatic. Yes, the 4 humors. And in the Sioux tradition, of course, this extends greatly out to the natives as well. You have the 4 groups of gods, which are the superior, the ally, the subordinate, and the spirit. Those are the different groups. You have the different understanding of these cycles of humanity, that is, infant, child, maturity, and the elderly. And then you have the types of creatures, the animals being the creeping, the flying, the 4-legged, and the 2-legged. These as different categories, right? And to the Pythagoreans, you have also the tetractys, which is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. This is why it represents 10 later on will represent the perfect number, but the 4 is the source of the tetractys. To go back to the natives, that is a classic trope. This idea of the 4 directions. As you pray and as you begin a ceremony, you call in the directions, and that is 4. And each has their own distinctive color for different reasons, depending. When it comes to certain ceremonies, they are usually organized in stages of 4 accordingly, since that is the sacred number. There are also some groups that feel that there are 4 human races, 4 different skin tones that denote the 4 races of humankind. Subsequently, by also this extension of humanity's, birth to youth to adult to death, or the different orders that always are 4, there's also the seasons that mirror the spring, the summer, the winter, the fall. And then when it comes to your well-being, by extension, there is the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. already mentioned the elements accordingly, as it is also very significant to the natives. And then you also have the very significant animals that are held as sacred. And again, these are just very distinct cultures. I'm not naming all the names. I'm moving very quickly. But in this case, it would be eagle, bear, wolf, and buffalo. That would be true for some, but not true for all. We would include other animals if it were different groups, right? You have the different ceremonial plants, which are more ubiquitous, in which case tobacco, sweetgrass, sage, cedar. The medicine wheel, also included in all that I've mentioned. This is the trick, though, and I've mentioned this before in the course, is that as soon as we look elsewhere, right, because we have all these examples of where 4 is significant, right, and we can substantiate that with lived experience, observation of genuine phenomena, and then we move to China. In China, the word for 4 is a homophone for the word for death. And so right there, we have a taboo. That 4 is not a good deal. And this is where you would omit that floor on the elevator kind of vibes. It was that sort of thing earlier where I was talking about you get a receipt and it says 666 on it, right? Or 13 or whatever. Like, this is the number to avoid in China. So, buildings omit it. People try to not have it appear on their documents or their license plates. If you are admitted to a hospital and you are sent to room 4, no, right? And that's cultural, and it's obvious based off the language that is your everyday language, right? And the only thing that kind of brings this in different with another culture is there is, of course, the case in Revelations where there are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So mixed bag there. So moving on. 5. The sum of the first even and odd numbers to the Pythagoreans. 2 plus 3 is 5. So again, 1 isn't a number to them. So thus, 2 plus 3 is 5. The first sum of the first odd and even number. This is human life. To add the first odd and even is the number for human life. And in which case, it also would hold significance for the Pythagoreans. So the 5 discovered regular solids. The octahedron, the dodecahedron, the isohedron, the tetrahedron, and the cube. So once they discovered the 5th, it was actually... The other associations with 5 is that it's somehow exotic and it's somehow rebellious. With the number 5 is forward. That moves forward to Venus. And this is the reference to the 5-pointed star, which is the pentagram. And here, here we go. All the flood of meanings that come in as soon as I say pentagram, right? In Manichaeanism, this is the first man having 5 sons. And this is because there are 5 elements, add aether, and there we go. And in which case, by extension, the 5 elements of light, which are ether, wind, water, light, and fire. And the 5 forms of darkness. And this is further substantiated by the 5 parts of the human body, the 5 virtues and the 5 vices. Now, when I say 5 parts of the human body, this is where you look at Da Vinci's, picture of the man. And that is that the limbs, the standard limbs, right? 2 legs, 2 arms, and count the head. 5 parts. right? And the central body is just connective tissue in this kind of mentality. So we are the pentagram. We are the pentagram. When and also this association with love, so strangely, right? In I don't know if it's still done in modern England, but I know it used to be done where the lover's knot was tied in such a way 5 times over to show lovers, right? The lover's knot to show romantic sentiment was to, show this knot, which is 5. The Mayans also held significance for the number because it was the center number of the compass, right? So if you have the 4 directions, you are 5 because you are in the middle of those directions. You are the observer of those directions. You are 5, which is why the elements are so significant and why we add the number 5 to Aether for elements, because Aether is spirit, it's the self. And so in which case there are the 4 elements and you are 5 and you have 5 fingers to show you that, right? Here we go. Here we go. And so that's part of the mystery. That's part of the mystery. When we start to bring signification and just to ask why, right? And you could say it's simply anatomical, right? There's a certain functionality to the 5 fingers that we should have, the 5 toes we should have. And then, to further blow it out as we're like looking into this, to observe that this body by the Vesuvian man, right, is a 5 extremities, the head, the arms, the legs. And so it's that extra element, that thing that moves beyond what was viewed as already the natural cycle. Again, the extra element, the thing that seems like an addition. Us, right? To think of like the simplicity that we project on the natural world as it would have been if we had not come into being, right? That it would all be quite easy, quite simple. And then here we come, this 5th essence, right? This quintessence that just gets thrown in the mix and that really gets the entropy going. And this is all related to that pentagram thing again too. It's central, or viewed as central, to occultism. And really that warrants its own investigation, this trope. And really I think it's just more of that than anything. It was a trope, a kind of idea that caught on to use the pentagram. If it represents us, it represents our will. And our will, as it is like made an iconography at the beginning of a ceremony to conjure something for our own intention. Thus the pentagram. We are the pentagram. But
Yeah, I'm gonna split this in 2 parts because I'm having some connection issues.